Good morning, everyone. The outline for the message is in the bulletin, so if you have the bulletin, look for the outline, the insert. Many people make the choice to become a Christian, and they start off enthusiastically, but somewhere along the way they encounter life, and one of two things happen. Number one, they give up on their faith in God. Or number two, they stop acting on it. Christianity is a long-distance race, kind of like the Boston Marathon that's going on. And it's not how you start, but it's how you choose to finish that determines your eternal destiny. And so in 1 Corinthians 15:58, it says, "Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain." The Bible promises that the work that you do for the Lord and in the name of the Lord is not in vain. In Galatians 6, verse 9, it says, "Don't get tired of doing what is good. Don't get discouraged and give up. For we will reap a harvest of blessing at the appropriate time." You know why this verse is in there? Because it's easy to get tired of being good and doing good. Have you discovered that? That it's a whole lot easier to be selfish than it is to be generous. But this passage says that you will be rewarded for your goodness if you do not give up your faith in God. And a great biblical example of not giving up was the Apostle Paul. He was a fellow who understood the difficulties and the pressures of life, and he wrote about them in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, beginning in verse 8, where he said this, "We are pressed on every side by troubles, but we are not crushed and broken. We are perplexed, but we don't give up and quit. We are hunted down, but God never abandons us. We get knocked down, but we get up again and keep going." I love that last one. We are knocked down, but we get up and keep going. He was the spiritual Rocky of the New Testament. And if you have seen any of the 31 Rocky films, you know that he never gave up. And so I think we even have a picture. Do we have some kind of a... Yeah. Keep going. Well, there's only enough for keep going. We can't get the last G on going. But you get the idea. Keep going. And when you look at this passage, it is really encouraging. Notice he says, press on every side. What he's saying is, I feel pressure from every angle. I am like a football player, like a quarterback who's being blitzed by the defense. Perplexed. Look at the word perplexed. That means I don't understand everything that is going on in my life. I don't know about you, but it's comforting for me to know that even an apostle did not understand everything that was happening to him. Sometimes we have things going on in our lives and we respond by saying, "I don't understand why this is happening. I don't understand why I'm going through this." Join the club. Paul said he was perplexed about a lot that was going on in his life. And then it says that he was persecuted. It literally means that he was hunted down like a fox. And then he says, knocked down, but we get up, means that he was like a boxer in the ring. The guy gets knocked down, but you grab the ropes, you get up, and you keep going. So this passage ought to really be a source of encouragement for us to keep going and not give up in our spiritual lives. So we're going to look at 8 ways that we can keep our spiritual flame burning. And we're using spiritual flame as a metaphor to represent the faith that we have in Jesus Christ. And so the first thing, if we're not going to give up, is focus on what I have because of God's mercy. If you and I are going to keep our faith to the end, then we need to focus on what we have because of God's mercy. In 2 Corinthians 3:18, it says, as the Spirit of the Lord works within us, we become more and more like Him and reflect His glory even more. And so, since God in His mercy has given us this wonderful ministry, we never give up. And so, we are not giving up for two reasons according to this passage. Number one, the Spirit is working in you to help you become more like Christ. And number two, God in His mercy has given you a ministry of transforming people's lives at work, at home, at your place of employment, in your social activities. You are making an eternal difference in people's lives. And so, we're not giving up. And then number two, if we're going to keep our spiritual flame burning, we have to be genuine and authentic. That's the next thing that Paul says in 2 Corinthians 4, is be genuine and authentic. And what that means is don't wear a mask. Be yourself. If you try to be something you're not, your faith isn't going to last for two reasons. Number one, you're going to be under stress because of the fear of being exposed. And number two, you're going to end up manipulating people because you're trying to hide yourself from them. And so this is what Paul said about his being genuine and authentic in 2 Corinthians 4:2. We have turned away from secret and shameful ways. We use no trickery, and we do not change the teaching of God. We teach the truth plainly, showing everyone who we are. Then they can know in their hearts what kind of people we are in God's sight. That is great. Paul says, I have nothing to hide. I am transparent, completely transparent, and what you see is what you get. Now, one great thing about Christianity is that you don't have to be perfect in order to be used by God, but you do have to be genuine and authentic. So you have to decide whether you want to impress people or influence people. You can impress people from a distance, but you can influence people only up close, and when they're up close, they're going to be able to tell whether you are authentic or not. And so the secret to a lasting faith is we have to live authentically. So be genuine and authentic. And then number three, the third thing. If we're going to keep the spiritual flame burning, if we're going to keep our faith to the end, we have to be motivated by a servant's attitude, not a selfish attitude. Be motivated by a servant's attitude, not a selfish attitude. So in 2 Corinthians 4:5, it says, we don't go around preaching about ourselves. We preach Christ Jesus the Lord. All we say about ourselves is that we are your servants because of what Jesus has done for us. And then in the New International Version, in the last part, it says, your servants for Jesus' sake. Now, that's underlined because it's a key phrase. One reason Paul did not lose his faith and was able to handle all kinds of stress was because he was motivated by a servant attitude, not a selfish attitude, and he did what he did for Jesus' sake. And so if you're going to last, You have to clarify what your motivation is for living the Christian life, because if you don't, you're going to flame out before the finish line. We have to be doing what we do for Jesus' sake. We're not doing it to promote ourselves. We're not doing it to feel superior to others. We're not doing it for prestige or popularity or power. We're doing it for Jesus' sake. Now, we need to remind ourselves of what Paul went through. Now, listen to this from 2 Corinthians 11. I have worked harder, been put in jail more often, been whipped times without number, and faced death again and again. 5 times the Jews gave me 39 lashes. That's 195. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. Once I spent a whole night and a day adrift at sea. I have traveled many weary miles. I have faced danger from flooded rivers and from robbers. I have faced danger from my own people, the Jews, as well as the Gentiles. I have faced danger in the cities and in deserts and on the stormy seas. And I have faced danger from men who claim to be Christians but are not. I have lived with weariness and pain and sleepless nights. Often I have been hungry and thirsty and have gone without food. Often I have shivered with cold, without enough clothing to keep me warm. Then, besides all this, I have the daily burden of how the churches are getting along. Wow! If you and I were to ask Paul, were you able to keep your faith? He would have answered and said, I did it for Jesus' sake. Now, why are you here today, and why haven't you given up on your faith? There are things in your life that are not going the way that you want them to, relationally, financially, socially. The reason why you're here and you have not given up your faith is because you are doing it for Jesus' sake. And when Jesus is the basis for the motivation for what we do, then like Paul, we're not going to give up our faith in the Lord. So be motivated by a servant attitude, not a selfish attitude. And then number 4, the fourth thing in keeping our spiritual flame burning is we have to be ready to accept our limitations. You and I have to realize that we are human, that we have limitations, that we can't do it all. And that's what this passage says. So this is 2 Corinthians 4:6. For God, who said, let light shine out of darkness, made His light shine in our hearts to give us the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Christ. But we have this treasure, God's light, in jars of clay, our physical bodies, to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. What in the world is he talking about? He's saying our frail bodies are like clay jars. Did you know we're all clay jars? We're all clay jars. Some are bigger, some are smaller, some are tall, some are short, some are beautiful, some are not so beautiful. I think I did that right. There's 2 things that you and I have in common as clay jars. Number 1, we are easily broken. See that clay jar? We're easily broken. And number 2, we have limitations. And the quickest way for you to burn out in the Christian life is to start pretending that you are Superman or Superwoman. In order to maintain your faith to the end, you have to realize that you, as a clay jar, have certain limitations. So I decided to name 4. Number 1, you are not God. Okay, there's one God. He lives in heaven. God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit. You are not God. Number two, you cannot be everywhere at once. The person who is trying to be available to all people at all times for anything is going to burn out. Number three, you cannot please everybody. Number four, you cannot fix everybody's problems. You cannot give 100% of the time. And so our bodies are not immune to pressure. And so the best way for us to deal with these limitations that we have as clay jars is for us to learn to pace ourselves. You know, everybody is either a turtle or a racehorse. And so whichever one you are, pace yourself accordingly. And remember that Rome was not built in a day, and you are not going to get everything done in one day. So if we're going to make it to the end, we have to understand that we are clay jars, that we have limitations. We cannot do it all. You're not expected to do it all. And then number 5, if we're going to keep the spiritual flame burning, we have to learn to love other people. Love other people. And while you're filling that in, it says this in 2 Corinthians 4:15. All of this is for your benefit, so that the grace that is reaching more and more people may cause thanksgiving to overflow to the glory of God. So would you circle for your benefit? Paul says the reason he keeps going is because he knows that what he is doing is helping other people. If you don't love people, you're not going to last. If you don't love in your marriage, if you stop loving in your marriage, if you stop loving as a parent, if you stop loving your career, you're going to give up. Because when you stop loving, you stop trying, because love is the motivating factor of life. And so if we're going to keep going, then we have to learn to keep loving. And then number 6, if we're going to keep our flame burning to the end, learn to renew yourself day by day. Learn to renew yourself day by day. Now, yes, day by day. So I was reading this article on how people keep their cars running a long time. Because my truck is getting close to 200,000 miles, and I hope it keeps going. And I was reading these articles about people who would drive their cars 250,000 miles, 300,000 miles, 400,000 miles. One guy even drove his Toyota 1 million miles. And they said that the secret is that you have to service it regularly. It wasn't that these people were brilliant mechanics, and yes, every 100,000 miles in my garage I overhaul my own transmission. No, they just learned to service their cars on a regular basis. Now, I think you might know where I'm going with this. You and I have to do the same thing with our spirit or our inner person. We have to service our inner person on a daily basis. And so, in 2 Corinthians 4:16, Paul said, therefore we do not lose heart. We don't lose it. Though outwardly we are wasting away. Would anybody like to come and give a testimony on that? By the way, I came across this. How do you know when you're getting old? Since we're all outwardly wasting away. You know you're getting old when you and your teeth don't sleep together. Your back goes out, but you stay home. It takes 2 tries to get up from the couch. Your idea of weightlifting is standing up. Your address book has names that mostly start with doctor. The twinkle in your eye is merely a reflection from the sun on your bifocals. Your memory is shorter, and your complaining is longer. You looked for your glasses for 20 minutes and they were on your head the whole time. You know you're getting old when you've given up all of your bad habits, but you still don't feel good. You think you have more patience, but actually it's just that you don't care anymore. And finally, you know you're getting old when you wonder how you could be over the hill when you don't ever remember climbing it. So, though outwardly we are wasting away, yet, watch this, inwardly we are being renewed day by day. Now, if you and I are going to renew ourselves day by day, we have to learn the secret of mid-air refueling. We might have a picture. Okay. So maybe you've seen this on TV. Perhaps if you've been in the military, it's possible you've seen this live. This requires an enormous amount of skill on the part of the pilot, because that big plane and the smaller planes going along about 300 miles an hour, and that plane comes in close. There's all kinds of air currents and turbulence coming off of the big plane. So it takes, Neil, you have to have nerves of steel to get right up to the hose. But you see, this plane is going to be refueled without landing. So it can just continue on its journey. And this is a metaphor for what you and I have to do spiritually. You and I have to learn to renew ourselves on a daily basis. You have to learn to renew yourself while you're working at a job and while you are raising a family. You can't quit your job and go off and refuel for a month. You can't stop raising your family for 6 weeks because you have to go refuel. So you have to learn to spiritually refuel in the air. So you have to find some things that you like to do that gives you a break from your daily routine. I don't know, maybe you're an expert craftsperson. Maybe you build birdhouses. I know of a guy who built great birdhouses, and he would travel around and sell them like at flea markets and stuff. He's a real expert in birdhouses, and you can build birdhouses. Maybe it's exercise. Maybe you can get out for 45 minutes and go jogging or walking real fast, or riding a bike, or go swimming or something. Or maybe it's some hobby that you have. But we have to learn to refuel our spiritual bodies in mid-air while we're flying. One of the keys. And then, number 7 is look at everything with an eternal perspective. Now, this one is last for a reason, because it's the one that I want us to think about as we go out the door. But look at everything with an eternal perspective. Paul's secret in keeping his faith to the end was realizing that there is more to life than just the here and the now. When you lose your perspective, you get tired. And when we get tired, it's much easier for us to give up. Now, you may feel like quitting your job on Monday morning, Tuesday morning, and Wednesday morning, and Thursday morning, and Friday morning. So you have to get an eternal perspective on it. Do you know what Paul said in the book of Colossians to slaves? He said, You have to look at your slavery situation from an eternal perspective and remember that you're not just working for an earthly master, but you are working for a heavenly master, focused on your heavenly master. And I'm thinking, listen, if it works for slaves, surely it's going to work on the job. And so in 2 Corinthians 4:17, for our present troubles are quite small. I love that. Beating, stoning, shipwrecks. Small. Listen, I'd count getting stoned pretty big. How about you? I don't mean stoned like stoned on drugs. Never mind, I'm not going there. I mean like with rocks. I think, if I'm going to go, I could, they could do the lethal injection. But to get stoned, just to be standing there, hey, take this stone, take this one, take this one, take this one. Oh, this stone, what a way to go, huh? For our present troubles are quite small and won't last very long. Yet they produce for us an immeasurably great glory that will last forever. So we don't look at the troubles we can see right now. Rather, we look forward to what we have not yet seen. For the troubles we see will soon be over, but the joys to come will last forever. Well, what a great passage! What he's saying is that the greatest motivation in life for the believer, for the Christian, it is not internal, it is not external, it is eternal. It is looking past the problems to the reward. In Hebrews chapter 12, Paul said that, how about Jesus? I don't know if Paul wrote the book of Hebrews or not, but whoever wrote Hebrews said this about Jesus, that he endured the cross, looking forward to the joy set before him. And so, no matter what happens, don't give up on your faith. And remember this, that your eternal reward is going to be greater than any problems you're going through right now. As I mentioned earlier, we have the little cards, either the green or orange card. Next week we're going to talk about 7 things that Jesus does for us, that he did for his apostles after he came back from the dead. Will be in the book of John chapter 20. And what Jesus did for them, he's wanting to do for us too. There are people who are hurting physically, hurting on the inside, spiritually. They need Jesus. And Easter may be a time that they are open to you, inviting them to come to services. So if you have a couple of people that you can invite, great. Write their names down. Pray about it during the week. And next Sunday, as we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ, we're going to talk about some things that the Lord does for us, wants to do for us. So do not give up. Keep looking at things from an eternal perspective. Joe is going to lead us in our invitation hymn. And if you have a particular need, please let us know what it is while we stand and sing.
We fall down